You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRocque.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. I hope you're doing well, enjoying the holiday season. It is my favorite. I happen to also have a cold right now, so I will attempt to record this without coughing continuously. That would be great. Although, of course, that will be edited out, so you won't have to hear it. So I thought I would go into more on paid-up additions today after a conversation with a client recently who was questioning the paid-up additions and how they work on his contract. For those of you who are very new to this concept or just tuning in or just starting to learn about whole life or the infinite banking concept, the paid-up additions are the premium that you are funding into the contract over and above the cost of the policy, over and above the cost of the insurance. Now, the cost of it and what we're paying for that, the premium is called the base premium. So the paid-up additions are the extra going in over and above the cost. So now, how long you're able to fund the paid-up additions or how they're stopped or when they stop works differently at different companies. And this was what we got into, the client and I thought I should probably do a podcast on so more people will understand. So some companies, the paid-up additions automatically will shut off according to your illustration. So if it illustrates 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 5 years, and then it shows the paid-up additions discontinuing, then the company will automatically discontinue your paid-up additions going forward. This happens with one of the companies that I work with and also one that I used to work with. They would shut off the paid-up additions when the illustration showed them that it was meant to be turned off or stop being funded. And then there are other companies that allow you to be flexible each year and then continue funding into the future. Now, I have 3 companies in mind. All 3 of them are flexible with how much paid-up additions you can fund in any year, but 2 of them operate differently from the one I just mentioned, in that they do not allow you or they do not automatically stop the paid-up additions per the illustration. They allow you to continue funding the paid-up additions. One company would allow you to fund up to 25 years if you wanted to keep funding it, and the other company indefinitely until you are elderly, 100, 121. You'd be able to fund it a long, long time, way too long. Now, for the company that allows you to fund for up to 25 years, the paid-up additions, they also allow you to skip years if you want to. However, the ceiling is the ceiling. So if you have a total premium ceiling of $30,000 a year, for example, that's the ceiling. You cannot go any higher. You cannot fund any paid-up additions higher than that. This company also requires that you pay a minimum towards the paid-up additions every month. You have to pay a minimum of at least $50 a month to keep your paid-up additions, your ability to fund the paid-up additions available to you. The first company that I mentioned that has a hard cutoff date for when you can fund the paid-up additions, they also have a minimum requirement each month. That is a $10 minimum requirement. But so every company does things just a little bit differently. My primary company, they do not require any minimum amount to go towards the paid-up additions every month. They allow you to skip the paid-up additions altogether. And in any year, you could skip paid-up additions, for example, for 4 out of every 5 years. So you could be funding and then something happens, you're not prepared, you lose your job, something happens where you can't fund the full premium that you had intended. You're allowed to skip the full year. There's no minimum. And the following year, you can then fund the paid-up additions in full. You can fund anywhere from 0 paid-up additions to the full amount that you had intended. And you can also fund more than the amount that you had intended. There's a ceiling, but then also they allow you to fund up to twice as much in paid-up additions. Now, just because they allow you to fund twice as much in paid up additions, I don't recommend that. You are almost guaranteed to make your contract. I want to say guaranteed. I want to say you'd be guaranteed to make your contract, but I can't say that every single person would 100% make the contract. But I would say, yeah, pretty close. You don't want to pay twice as much in paid up additions that you started with, at least not when I'm building you a contract, because you are going to MEC. When I'm starting off your contract, I'm starting it as close to the MEC ceiling as possible while still keeping you in a safe zone so that in the future you will not have a MEC to your policy. That is the goal, and that is what I'm always working towards. So if you were to double that in any year, it's very likely it will MEC 100%. But that doesn't mean the company doesn't allow you to. They will allow you to, and they will allow you to MEC your contract. I know I mentioned this before. I just wanted to reiterate again that you have to be somewhat on top of this. You don't want to just say, oh, they let me fund so much. I'm just going to fund 1.5 times my normal paid up additions or twice my normal paid up additions. Because even though they allow it, your contract will become a modified endowment contract. Now, if you had to skip a year of paid up additions or more than a year of paid up additions, you were unable to fund it, and now you want to pay double, or now you want to fund at a much higher level because you skipped a couple years, that may be totally possible. However, we will still want to check with the company because when you do a lot of swinging around with your premium, you drop it way down and then go back up, that can change your MEC ceiling. And so we'll want to check with the company to make sure what is the maximum that we could fund into paid up additions this year or going forward. We just want to double check that the MEC ceiling hasn't changed and that you can fund as high as you'd like to. As I previously just mentioned, you could skip 4 out of every 5 years with my primary company and still be able to fund at the highest level in year 5. And remember, you have the whole year to get those paid up additions in. They don't have to be funded on your anniversary date, even though that may be when you receive the invoice. You have all year to fund it. And then you get a renewed window. Now you can skip another 4 out of 5 years if for some reason you are unable to fund the next year or a couple years. But hopefully you're able to fund according to what we plan in the schedule because that will be in your best interest. Just fund paid up additions as long as possible from the start of the contract and according to what we had planned. But the flexibility is there, and I believe it allows you to fund on the higher end of your budget knowing that you can easily drop down in any year if it was too high for you. But that way you have a locked in higher ceiling so that you can fund higher when you have a bonus or a tax return or influx of cash from maybe inheritance or something. At least you're able to fund at a higher level. And then there are other companies, like another company that I work with, one of these 3 that I've mentioned, where they would take the average of the last 5 years in paid up additions, and then that's what you're able to do year 6. So they're going to look back the last 5 years and see what you funded to come up with what you're able to fund in the next year. I would say my primary company is the most flexible. However, because the company will allow you to continue funding the paid up additions, you will want to stay on top of how many years you would be able to fund. Anytime I have a review with my clients, this is definitely something that I'm looking out for. However, it's also helpful for you to keep track of when your paid up additions is scheduled to drop or the conversations that we had around it, how long you should be able to fund it versus how long you plan to fund it. Of course, you can always check in and we can double check how long we can still fund the paid up additions and how high or how much we can fund. We're able to check in with those types of illustrations and numbers after your anniversary is passed. So if too much time has gone by after your recent or after an anniversary, then they won't be able to run that detailed information until the anniversary comes again. But because the company will not automatically drop the paid up additions or stop sending invoices for it, it's just something that you would have to choose to just stop funding, just stop sending the money in for it. On some of the older contracts, paperwork would have to be signed to drop the paid up additions. But on newer contracts, it's only a matter of you discontinuing funding of it. If you lose track and we're working together and we haven't had a meeting in the last year or so, make sure you're paying attention to your mail because that's where the company will notify you that you have overfunded your policy or caused the policy to become a MEC, and you have a 30-day window or a short period of time to reverse that action. I would say that the bottom line is that just because your illustration may show a certain number of years and then showing the paid up additions dropping off doesn't mean that the company will automatically stop requesting the funds or let you know that you can no longer fund. They might just let you continue funding for many more years. Now, some of you might be thinking that maybe you prefer a more strict company where they are automatically going to discontinue those paid up additions to keep you, so you don't have to worry about it or think about it. There are certainly many benefits that come with the added flexibility with the primary company that I work with, which is if you're having a hard year and you have to skip a paid up additions that year or for a few years, you don't have any minimum requirement at all, and it won't affect what you can send in a paid up edition the next year or a year six, few years out. It won't affect that at all if you have to skip years. And then if you're hopeful that you can fund higher for some years because of the skipped years, you have that flexibility as long as we double check that it's not going to become a mech. And lastly, you are oftentimes able to fund the paid up editions longer than originally illustrated. This is especially great if you are no longer insurable, have no convertible term, and want to continue growing your banking system. At the end of the illustrated years that we projected you'd be able to fund the paid up additions, we could check in with the company. It's possible you can fund a little bit longer, and then you can continue funding and growing your banking system at that future time. Well, I hope this was helpful information that helps to shed some additional light on paid up additions. When you begin your contract, you can ask questions to make sure you understand what flexibility the paid up additions in your contract come with or don't come with, and then be attentive as the years roll by. For sure, you'll want to remember that with any contract, you will have to drop the paid up additions at some future point. I haven't yet seen a contract where you could pay the paid up additions for the rest of your life without causing it to become a modified endowment contract. At least not a contract built for the purpose of the infinite banking concept. So please reach out if you would like to partner with me and I can help you further, help you put infinite banking into practice, or even just help you with life insurance in general, or disability or long-term care, or if you're concerned you will outlive your savings. I can help you plan for, quote, living too long, if there's such a thing, dying too young, or becoming disabled in between. Again, thank you for listening and have a great week. Take care.